My name's Tim Markle. I am founder and director of the Forgiveness Factor.
What inspired you to create the forgiveness factor?
Well, I struggle with some mental health issues and have dealt with depression and anxiety and substance abuse. And so I carried around a lot of anger and resentment for a lot of my life. And it was something that fed into my addictions. It was also then something that caused my addictions in the first place. So as I was working through recovery, I was working on finishing up a master's program in Christian studies, and I had to do a capstone project. And what I was working on at that time was trying to figure out how to forgive. As I grew up, everybody told me I should forgive and that it was a great thing to forgive. But nobody that I remember taught me how to forgive. So what I did was I sat there and I said, okay, I know I'm supposed to forgive according to my faith background. So this is what my faith background says about forgiveness, but is there any scientific evidence out there that forgiveness works? So I researched forgiveness, and what I came up with was a training that helped people understand why forgiveness was important from the faith background, but also from the scientific background. And it was from that people started to say, what, you're talking about forgiveness? I need to learn about forgiveness. I don't know how to forgive. I'd like to learn how to forgive. And so we started Forgiveness Factor as a way to help people learn how to forgive. And the way we put it these days is how to forgive in an unforgiving world.
So I'll ask it. How do you forgive?
Well, I will try to succinctly bring in. I will bring down years of work into something that might be manageable for you to understand. So it starts with number one, looking at the fact that I have been hurt. We all get hurt, and so sometimes we get hurt in such a way that we hold on to that, and that's how we get resentments. And these resentments and anger can flood our life. They like leak out around us, even though we don't want them to. And so even if we have a resentment against a particular person, it begins to affect who we are. And it begins to affect the people around us. And so pretty soon we may notice that, you know what, I think there might be more to life. I'm not happy with all this hurt and anger that I'm carrying around. I'm not happy being short with other people. And then we try to figure out what to do about that. Some people turn to addiction. Some people just isolate from people. We all have these coping mechanisms that sometimes work, but usually they fall apart at some point in life. So with forgiveness, what we do is one of the steps is we look at, okay, so somebody has hurt you. Okay, how did that hurt change your view of the world? Are you still carrying that pain around with you? Are you sitting in life saying, okay, I will forgive them when they do something, giving the power over to the person? If they will tell me that they're sorry, if they will admit what they did was wrong, then I will consider to forgive them, forgetting that they may be living their best life and they may be having a great time. I'm the one that is sitting here in pain. I'm the one waiting. I am the one who's given over control. So we find that situation where something has hurt us inside, has changed us. We decide not to ignore it anymore. We decide not to addiction it away, if you would, but we're going to deal with it. And so one of the ways we deal with it is we look at what have we been doing to try to avoid it, to avoid dealing with it. And then we start to take a look at, do I really want to forgive? I look at everything I've tried and I've said, okay, I'm ready. I believe that forgiveness, and the science backs this out, that forgiveness can help me live a better quality of life. Forgiveness can help me build better relationships. Forgiveness can help me be a better parent, be a better spouse. If I would learn to forgive and then would start to forgive on a regular basis. So we have a hurt, We have an acknowledgement that I want to change and that what I've been doing doesn't work. I'm going to choose to forgive. So then we begin to look at who is that person that hurt us. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but when I was struggling to forgive my dad, I grew up in an alcoholic household, and that came with it a whole mess of factors. But I grew up wanting to blame my dad for everything that went wrong in my life, for my parents' divorce, for the fact that I had to change colleges, for the fact that I didn't have enough money. Everything was my dad's fault, and so I made him into this monster. And whenever I would think of my dad, whenever I would talk about my dad, I would tell these stories about the monster, about growing up, the child of an alcoholic. And this is what my dad was to me when I was growing up and in my young adulthood years. Unfortunately, somewhat into my middle adult years too, because I'm a pretty slow learner at times. What I had to do, and what we ask people to do in forgiveness, is to take a look at what are those stories that we have on like autopilot. When the thought of that person comes up, or we see that person, and our brain automatically goes to, oh, they are blank, and I'm going to treat them blank. And we identify when we're going onto that autopilot, and we say, I need to tell a better story. I need to learn more about what I believe about this person. We talk about this in terms of rehumanizing the person that hurt us. We begin to look at the fact that they have probably been hurt too. Nobody goes through this life without being hurt. Well, maybe they got hurt at a time that changed their view of the world, that changed who they were, that helped them to disconnect from people themselves. Maybe they have trauma or health issues in their background as well. Okay, can I take that into consideration? Can I take into consideration how they were raised, the family that they were in, the pressure that they might have been under when they hurt me? What was going on in their life at that time? If I know, I don't make up stuff, but if I know, then I can get a clearer picture about what was going on when they hurt me. If that's like one way, we can also sit there and try to rehumanize them by comparing ourselves. Do I need to eat and sleep? Well, guess what? So do they. If it rains on me, do I get wet? Yep. If it rains on them, do they get wet? Well, hell yeah, they do. We share so much in a common humanity that what happens to me can be generalized to what happens to other people around me. So I come to a point where I no longer feel this anger, this resentment against this person, but I tell myself, you know what? They're human. They have inherent worth. That's one of the biggest things we can come to, is the belief that everybody around us, even those people that hurt us, were born with worth. They didn't earn it. It's not attached to their paycheck. It's certainly not attached to their degrees. It's not attached to their success. We are each born with inherent worth. And nobody has a right to take that worth away from us. Nobody, the way I put it is, nobody gets to kick us off the island. Nobody takes our human card away from us. We were born with this humanity card, and we will carry it through for our entire lives, and nobody gets to change that. Once I determine that that person who hurt me is a person with inherent worth, and therefore I'm called to respect them as a human being, maybe not totally agree with everything they've done, but that at their core, they have worth. Then I can begin to feel compassion for them. I begin to see them as a wounded person who then wounded me. I begin to find out more parts of their life, and I expand their story from this is my dad who did blank, blank, and blank to this is my dad who struggled in childhood, who struggled with his own addiction issues, who didn't understand how to parent because his parents didn't do a great job of parenting. I expand my story about the person, and that continues to help me grow in compassion and in mercy. The other thing I begin to think about is when have I received compassion and mercy? How did that make me feel? Have I ever received that compassion and mercy? Well, I know what that feels like, and I know that person didn't have to show me mercy, but somebody chose to. So I can then choose to show mercy as well. And then the last thing I like to talk about when we talk about how to forgive is it's a way to live out your values. I talk to people, I'm like, okay, so do you value violence and anger and hatred and seclusion? Is that the life that you want to live? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, so when you are exuding anger, when you are isolating for people, what you're telling me is you're choosing to live a life you don't want to live. And they're like, yeah, that's right. I'm like, well, do you value things like love and mercy, kindness and compassion? And most people are like, well, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, okay, forgiveness is a way that we can take our values and extend them even to the people that have hurt us. We're great. I'm really good at showing love and kindness to people that are nice to me. Heck, I'll invite them over for dinner. I'll feed them dessert even. I mean, that's great. But someone who hurt me, I struggle. But if I want to believe that I am a loving person and if I value kindness, then that has to be something that I show throughout my entire life to everybody that I meet, not just the people that are nice to me, not just the people that I agree with. Is everybody has inherent worth, and I can choose to be merciful and loving and forgiving, even if that person hurts me.
How has forgiveness helped your own healing process?
Oh my goodness, Michael, I cannot even tell you the difference before I started on this forgiveness journey and my relationship, especially with my dad. We'll stick with the relationship with my dad. Um, we we had I had a couple of kids. Me and my wife. We had a couple of kids, and she believed that they should know their grandparents. And I'm like, no, we really don't need to drive to Ohio to see them. It's okay. And she's like, no, we will go to Ohio. So I had to figure out a way to navigate that. Well, it was really hard when I was holding tight to my anger and holding tight to resentment because the entire drive there, I would just get more angry and I would just get more resentful, being prepared to have to put up with this. When I started to lay over compassion and forgiveness, and when I started to learn to forgive my dad, then I started to look forward to seeing him again. And one of the things that I learned is that very few people ever get the father they wanted. And so I had to come to grips with the fact that this image of what I wanted my dad to be, it's going to stay an image. Nothing is changing that past. He's not going to suddenly become the dad that I wanted him to be. He's his own person on his own path, and he walked his own path. And so I had to come to this realization that if I wanted a relationship with my dad, I had to forgive him. I had to let go of this anger and resentment. And then I had to put forth, I had to give compassion and love. I had to give this gift of not just, I'm going to ignore you, but wanting good for that other person. And when I started to do that, I started to enjoy traveling to Ohio to see him. We started to talk more on the phone. We would talk recovery. When he got into recovery, we talked recovery and we talked football. I like having people I could talk football and recovery to. So that was my dad. I could talk recovery and football with him. And I cannot even tell you how important it was when he finally passed away and we all were able to be around his bed as he passed, to feel love and compassion, knowing that I had worked to not just forgive, but to also reconcile with him and to have a relationship with him. It was a sense of freedom, a sense of lightness. It was very sad that he had died. But knowing that I got to know him and that I was able to forgive him meant a lot to me. And I think it meant a lot to him as well.
How does it feel to help others on their journeys?
Oh, I love teach. So I get to teach a couple of classes a year in this little town that I'm in through health and wellness in our senior center. I get to do some keynotes for different conferences. I get to do some breakouts. I travel a little bit with this. And let me tell you, some of the most impactful things are the people that come back for, they don't just take the class once, but they take the class again because they grew a little bit in understanding at the first class. And then that second class, they just take a leap and they start to see these changes and they tell me about these changes in life. Like there's this one person who took classes, one student, she is just like, okay, so I've been mad at my ex for decades. And holidays, I decided that, you know what, he's still a part of my kid's life and family. And so I've been working on forgiveness. And when he showed up for Thanksgiving that year, I found out that I felt like I wanted him to be a part of the family instead of wanting him to not be at all.
Right.
And that was just such a big change. The other thing that always excites me is someone who comes into the class and they're sure they know who they want to forgive. And then we start talking about who is it that hurt you? Who is it that really affected your life? And who's holding you back from being able to live out your values? And sometimes that changes. They're just like, I thought it was this person. Oh, but in reality, I remember this one person who came into class and she's like, I came in believing I needed to forgive my ex-husband. And when we started to dig into it, I figured out that, you know what? Yeah, I'm mad at him and I'm angry at him. But during the divorce, my family took his side.
Mm.
I really need to forgive my family because I'm really ticked off at them. I'm like, that's fantastic. Then let's work on who in your family you need to forgive. And then eventually you can get to forgiving others. It's not like you forgive once and it's done. Is you want to make it into a lifestyle because that way you also sort of prevent that anger and resentment from coming to live again. Is you start to learn to forgive quicker and it becomes easier over time.
I know for me that my parents divorced when I was 8, so I didn't know, a married couple very much. So that led to, a lot of anger and stuff. Uh, how does forgiveness help your mental health?
Oh, that's a great question. And I love that question because one of the things I really like talking about is the role of forgiveness in mental health. That if I want to be mentally healthy, okay, so let's look a little bit with what unforgiveness does to our mental health. So if I am angry, resentful, I'm holding on to this toxic anger against somebody. Number one, we already talked about how it sort of begins to leak out of us around us. We just begin to be unhappier. Some people begin to be known as angry people. And that then affects the relationships around us. And it's harder for people to want to be around us. And so the more anger we hold, the more isolated we probably will be. And I don't think isolation is good
Mm.
for our mental health. I know as an addict, community is healing. Relationships are healing. Isolation is problems. It's a problem area. So that part affects mental health. I also know that through my own journey, I begin to perseverate on that person. I begin to think about, oh my gosh, they have so many more blessings or they're so much more successful, but because they did this to me, I'm not. And I start comparing my life to theirs. And if a song comes on the radio, maybe I think of them. If I smell something, I begin to think of them. And it's like I'm totally distracted by this anger and this resentment. And if I can't focus on what's important to me, if I can't focus on growth, if I continually am being distracted by my own thoughts and by my negativity towards somebody else, then I'm not going to be able to grow. The other area that I see forgiveness as being very important in mental health is the ability to learn how to forgive myself. Is a lot of my downward mental health starts with these negative thoughts and negative words in my brain that I'm telling myself, and that I find that I struggle having kindness and self-compassion to myself. So if I take the principles of forgiveness and I turn them inward, am I able to get to that point where I believe that I have inherent worth, that I am more than my mistakes, that I bring value to this world? And just like I want to value loving and being merciful to other people, part of that is also having a value of being loving and merciful to myself. Let me tell you, my mental health radically changes when I'm not constantly putting myself down, when I'm not reminding myself that, oh, you failed once, you're going to fail again, when I'm not setting out too high of expectations for myself, when I'm realizing that I am human, I have worth, I have value, and I will make mistakes and I will not get it right every single time. But that doesn't affect my value. Self-forgiveness is one of the ways that we can really build in positive, encouraging mental health for ourselves.
What do you do to help your own mental health?
Number one, I refuse to practice my addictions. So all addicts, all anybody who struggles in recovery knows that key number one is don't do that. So the problem comes in when I just decide that if I just don't do that, everything's going to be good. Like that's going to change the way that I grew up. Like that's going to change what happened. No, it just means that I have one less coping mechanism to deal with the world. Okay, so first, I don't do that. Second, I say, okay, what is it that what is it I want to accomplish? Do I want to become more forgiving? Do I want to help other people? What are the values that I want to live out? And then I said about how am I going to do that? So I set some positive goals and work for positive things. I look at those things that and relationships that bring positivity and light into my life, and I actually do try to limit time spent with people that are overly negative, people that are just complaining, not because I don't love them, not because I don't appreciate them, but because I can only take so much of that because I have I'll just eat it up. I'll just put it all inside, and then that'll start to bring my mental health down. The other thing that I've really learned to do is begin to identify when I'm not in a good place. Now, that sounds really simple, right? It's like when you're mad, you're mad. When you're depressed, you're depressed. Yeah, but usually I just sort of, in the past, I would sit there and wait, hopefully that something would happen and it would pass. So for me, keeping myself mentally well means that when I am not feeling well, I am taking action. The way that I explain it in my life is I've changed the thought that when I'm depressed, it used to feel like I'm in a pit, that it was dirty and nasty and wet and muddy and it smelled. And there I sat. And now I'm like, well, you know what? I'm someplace that it's dirty and it smells and it's wet and I don't like it. But wait, it's a tunnel. It's not a pit. If I get moving, if I keep moving, I am going to get out of this tunnel. And that's been really important to me, whether that means that I change the way that I'm thinking, that I do something to make me laugh, that I take a break from whatever may be totally stressing myself out, if I can take a break from it. But I do something to to move my life forward. I try not to spend so much time dwelling and just sitting there. I try to keep moving. The other thing is that really, I've been walking. I've been walking back when I don't know if anybody else has this issue, but sometimes I'm sitting here and I think I'm fine one moment, and then all of a sudden I'm just like ticked off as hell, and I'm like, what? How did I get here? And I talk to really smart people, and they say you must return to your center. I'm like, my center is so friggin' far away from me right now. You just take a friggin' leap. I'm not returning to my center. I'm ticked off. So what I've started to do, and so I just remain ticked off. So I'm like, well, neither one of those are options. I can't remain ticked off because then I'm going to have bad mental health. I'm going to have bad days. I'm going to have bad relationships. It just doesn't work that way. But I also can't just leap back to the center and say, well, I guess I'm angry. I'm going to not be angry anymore. No. So what I've started to do is I've started to walk backward. The first thing is identify that I'm angry and say, okay, I just did this the other day. I'm like, I am feeling pretty depressed right now. I wonder why. What just happened that brought me to this place? And so if I can walk back an inch and say, oh, I had that email from somebody at work and that didn't go well. Okay, but that's not really enough to get me depressed. Well, yeah, Tim, but remember, before that is you were thinking about retirement and healthcare and how that's all going to work years and years down the line. And so you were thinking far into the future and you were starting to worry about all that stuff. You had some worry combined with the bad interaction. Okay, well, what happened before that? And I walk it back so that I begin to see that my depression, my anger is almost never the result of one action by one person. So just like I'm not going to be able to jump back to my center, I can work my way back, because what I want to do is I want to get to that point so that I begin to identify the things that are setting me off closer to my center rather than all the way over in anger. And so my hope is that if I can learn the steps that I'm taking to get to where I don't want to go, then I'll take fewer steps. I'll stop sooner. And so that's what I'm working on right now for my mental health.
What would you say to anyone going through a tough time?
I'm sorry. Life sucks. It is hard. And you get to feel those feels, and there's no way to get around it. But think about a time where you did something you didn't think you could do. I bet when you were a child, you were sitting there thinking crawling was the best damn thing in the world. And then you discovered walking. Well, then maybe you discovered you could ride a bike. And then maybe you didn't know anything about words or sentences, and you learned words and sentences. And maybe you learned math. And maybe there was something you didn't think you could do, and now you do it with ease. I do so many things today that I didn't think that I could do back in the day. What are some of those things for you? Because you have already overcome obstacles. You have already broken through barriers. You have already proven that you are a warrior. This is not the first time your life has been hard. This is not the first obstacle you have ever come against. You have made it through other hard times, and you will make it through this hard time too, in your time, in the way that you need to do to take care of yourself to do it. But you have the courage and you have the strength. You've proven that already. So let's take that courage and strength and push through this, whatever this is that's in front of you. And I'd also say, find somebody to talk to about it. I love talking about things to people, but not everybody likes to listen to me. So I have to find those people that are going to be encouraging and listening and not tell me what to do and not just poo-poo it and not just offer me a sandwich, but will listen and offer support when needed.
Thank you for saying that. I know for me, sometimes just hearing something like that, makes a world of difference. So thank you.
Yeah, I need to be reminded that I have done stuff that I have succeeded before, because I will get into my mind like, oh my gosh, I'm a failure, I'm a failure, I'm a failure, I can't do anything right, blah blah blah. Those thoughts will come, and sometimes it takes somebody else to remind me. It's like, dude, didn't you do this, or did you do this? Do your kids still like you? Yeah, my kids still like me. Well, that's huge. Your kids still want to hang out with you. Good job. It's just, let's remember the good things about ourselves as well.
Where do you want to see your mission in the next 3 to 5 years?
um, I have now started to play the Powerball regularly, because we know all dreams come through playing the Powerball.
Right.
They sucked me in. If only I won the Powerball, then I don't know who did that advertising campaign, but damn it, it worked on me. I I want to be able to write more about forgiveness. I want to be able to talk to more people about forgiveness, and I'm also considering what it would look like to offer groups or individual, yeah, almost like coaching sessions on forgiveness, so that it's not just, hey, this is how you do it, but let's walk together as a group, and let's start to build that foundation of forgiveness together. But to do that, I need to have a few more hours in the day. So those are the dreams down the road. When and if I ever get to retire, I'll be able to spend more time to really connect with people, to help them walk this path of forgiveness. Because I believe that it's as contagious as all the negativity we see out there as well. I believe positivity is contagious. I believe forgiveness is contagious. The way a friend of mine puts it is that, everything ripples. Everything has effects. I believe forgiveness can ripple, but we need a lot more people that are believing in and practicing forgiveness to really combat the hate and revenge seeking that we see out there right now.
How can people reach out to you and learn more?
Well, I have a website, which I tried to make really simple because, well, I can't remember much. Case in point, my wife decided that we would get married on September 9th in 1995. Why? So that I could remember the numbers 9995. When's my wedding anniversary? 9995. Cool. Nice and simple. The website's Forgiveness Factor, forgivenessfactor.org. There's ways to reach out to me. There's forgiveness boosts. I'm fortunate enough that I'm on a local radio station once a week, doing 3-minute snippets about forgiveness and how forgiveness applies to life. And I love doing that. There's also other forgiveness boosts, other stories along the way, and a connection to one of the best resources that I know, which is the International Forgiveness Foundation, out of Madison, Wisconsin. Is they have built the evidence for forgiveness, and they are out there trying to change the world through forgiveness by instituting forgiveness education in classes. What if we gave this upcoming generation a different tool than we had? What if we taught them forgiveness, taught them the worth of their classmates at a young age, how to deal with people that disagree with you through forgiveness? Maybe they would have then different ways to solve the problems of our world. So they're really about starting that core forgiveness in education, look at forgiveness in family, forgiveness in places of worship as well.